It's Chelsea,
It's Nina.
and you're in the Critics' Kingdom.
Welcome, all of our Sonic lovelies, to another episode of the Critics' Kingdom. Today it's gonna be a party. I mean, kind of. So today we're reviewing the is it the Princess Protection Program or just Princess Protection Program? I don't think
It's just Princess Protection. I don't think there's a the.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that. Conditioning. But yes, Princess Protection Program starring, the iconic Selena Gomez and Demetria Lovato. This film came out in 2009. I want to say that it was their first big project together.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
for Disney
correct.
Channel. They were both sort of beginning their, I don't know, like teen idol fare on their in their own realms or on their own shows and such. But I think this is the first time that they were together on screen as not children.
And they're also friends.
Yeah, because they were friends from a young age. So Disney is capitalizing on that because that's what they do with their people in the basement. And and this one is actually sort of entirely written and directed by women, which is pretty cool, I would say. It's always pleasant to see. I always enjoy seeing that.
We love the female gaze.
Go us. But yeah, I think that this is one that both Chelsea and I were sort of, or at least I was sort of fully out of my Disney phase by the time this came out. I feel like I was a full-on junior in high school. So I literally didn't have time. I was like, yo, pre-SATs, I'm busy.
Oh God, what a dark period.
Pre-SATs and then SAT subject tests. And I had to take both the ACT and SAT. Oh,
they got rid of them. They got rid of those subjects.
Really?
Yes. Well, now there's
I did not know
this is totally unrelated, guys. But now there's literally this whole movement where they're just we don't want to accept any more standardized testing anymore for colleges because they've already stopped doing it for international students, which I wish was a thing when I was coming up because I graduated from an international school, because they're you just don't learn. It's not fair. It's inherently unfair because you don't learn it correctly. But now they're doing it even for domestic students. A lot of schools are you don't, it's optional now to take the SAT or the ACT.
I always that was definitely something that was a conversation that was it was a big part of the conversation when I think we were applying about the worth of these tests. But they were definitely still being used, and they were being used as just benchmarks, But that's interesting. I'm curious to see what colleges look like without those benchmarks.
Same.
And what metrics they begin to use. I'm really not passing judgment on it either way. This to me is a very fun social experiment to see what happens.
No, I'm very interested to see where College Board is going to be in 10 or 15 years.
Will it exist?
Will it exist? Right. Will it
even exist? Is it going to just, because all of its money came from charging for these damn tests. I'll tell you that much.
Right.
But
that had absolutely nothing to do with Princess Protection Program.
Well, I mean, they're in high school. I guess, right?
They're juniors. You're correct. They are juniors.
Yeah, it's high school. That's the next, But, okay, with that, do you want to get into the recap of Princess Protection Program?
Yes, I will. So we start off with Demetria is playing Princess Rosalinda, who is the princess of a small island nation called Costa Luna. It is a small country and often not found on maps. We will address that later. And she is about to get coronated as queen because her father has passed, and she's obviously next in line. And she's 16, and they're doing the practicing for her coronation. And she's talking with her mother, and then her close confidant is her dressmaker, Mr. Elegante. So everybody is all in alignment. They're all practicing the coronation in the palace. And the next thing they know, General Magnus comes stomping through, and he's like, so I'm just going to take over Costa Luna because I've been waiting all these years, but your father was too strong of a person, I guess, to let me get through, or I'd respected him. I don't know. One of the two. And so he's like, but now that he's dead, I think this is a good time while you're practicing for your coronation for me to take over Costa Luna and make it part of the island nation that I am over called Costa Estrella. And now they're going to be the same country basically. So at that point, her mother, and Mr. Elegante, and then one of the like I don't know what to call them, their military service, like their secret service or whatever you want to call them. They all rush her and her mother out because they're trying to get them away from General Kane so he can't capture them and then like fully be in control of the country. So they rush her out and they put her in something called the Princess Protection Program. And the serviceman who helped her is Major John Carter. And wow, sorry, that's not his name. That's his daughter. His daughter's name is Carter. That's why I was thinking that. His name is Major Joe Mason. And
Isn't that's that character in is that Mars character?
Yeah, that's another character named
played by Tim Riggins.
Yes, played by Tim Riggins.
It's just like, please continue.
Yes. Major Joe Mason is the one who gets her out and gets her in the program. Meanwhile, her mother is captured by General Kane, and it basically guarantees her safety because since he doesn't have Rosalinda, he's not going to kill the mother. So they just basically are like, put her in a dusty cell, and then they just take her on down. And when they bring Rosalinda to the Princess Protection Program, she's finding out that this is actually a secret service that's funded by all the royal families throughout the world, so that if anything is to happen to them, their monarchy is destabilized, the country's going under, whatever, the next in line princesses will be safe and will be sent to a different place where they won't be found. And they're like, well, we have to give you a makeover, which all they do is cut our tracks. But sure.
Not even all the tracks.
Not even all the tracks. They cut some of them. And they're like, we need to put you someplace where nobody will expect you to be. So they send her home with Major Mason because nobody would expect her to be in Lake Monroe, Louisiana, where he lives with his daughter Carter, who is played by Selena Gomez. And when we meet Carter, she's basically like an insecure, like kind of what we would have called a tomboy in the past type of person, and she works in the bait shop that her dad owns as like a front for him actually being this international spy with the Princess Protection Program. And she and she has like her friend Ed, who's like a documentary filmmaker, or
cousin Greg.
Cousin Greg from Succession,
and he continues to deliver.
Yes, say. He literally is playing basically the same character.
Fantastic.
And she is trying to go on this date with this guy named Donnie, who's like a popular guy at her school, and then also trying to deal with the popular girls, Chelsea and Brooke, at the same time. So Rosalinda coming into her world is not necessarily welcome because she's like, oh great, now I have to take care of another person, and she doesn't know what's going on. And she has to basically teach Rosalinda like what it is like to be like an American kid here in Lake Monroe, Louisiana. And Rosalinda has to borrow her clothes. They have to share the same room, which Rosalinda at first is like, oh, well, just move your bed out the room and like I'll have enough space. And she's like, girl, this is my room and we don't have any other rooms, so we're sharing the same bedroom, like 2 beds, same bedroom. But they initially have like a lot more hostility between each other because Carter cannot stand her and how she doesn't know anything. Because obviously she's a princess and she was very much what seems to be like raised like she had governesses and like she learned all these languages and like she wasn't brought up in a typical environment. So
in the swamp.
Right. She wasn't brought up in the swamp. She also wasn't brought up in America. In the swamp.
Yeah.
So she's like having to learn a lot of stuff. And eventually, though, Rosie tells her, they end up telling her she needs to change her name from Rosalinda to Rosie so people don't know who she is. And Rosie tells her like the story of like, my dad died and my mom's basically been captured by this like evil man. And somebody's trying to take over the country that I'm supposed to be queen of. And so then Carter's like, man, that does suck. So then she comes around to her, and Rosie also is kind of like changing things at the school because of who she is. She's like very secure in herself. And like the popular girls, Chelsea and Brooke, don't really know what to do with her because she like has no weaknesses for them to bully. Because she's pretty and she's smart and she knows all of her stuff. So they're just kind of like, well, what do we do about this? And not to mention, she's also catching the attention of Donnie, who is Carter's crush, and he's like in love with her from the first moment he sees her. Um, and so they don't really know what to do. So they're like, oh, well, she needs to work, or she like gets told by Major Joe Mason, like, oh, you should work, and like that's how you can like keep busy XYZ. So then Chelsea is like, oh, well, I'm going to get her a job at the yogurt factory or the yogurt place that my dad owns, and we'll make sure that everything goes wrong so then she'll be embarrassed. So they do it, but then all that really happens is Rosie is just like, I'm stronger than them, and then just like walks away with yogurt all over her.
I'm better
And
than
then
this.
Carter is
All
just like,
these
wow.
people.
It's truly wild. Like, she's literally just like, I don't like this doesn't mean anything to me because I am literally a queen. Like
Yeah, like, this is what the peasants do for fun?
literally,
Huh.
she was so confused. She's just like, I don't understand. Um, but meanwhile, General Kane is trying to bring her out of hiding. So he brings her mother up from the dirty cell that they have her in allegedly, even though she's wearing a bright blue dress. So I have questions. And she's changed. But he brings her up and he's like, I'm going to tell everybody in the press that I'm going to marry you so that will make Rosie come home. And her mom's like, well, we're not getting married, so why would you do that? And he's like, it's literally just to bring her out, like, so I can get her and I can fully take over. So then he puts it out to all the press, like, we're getting married, blah, blah, blah. And Brooke and Chelsea, the one time Brooke decides to go into a library, she sees it in a Spanish language magazine that Rosalinda's mom and General Kane are getting married. And she knows because they have a photo of Rosalinda and her mom together. And it says, like, the princessa and La Reina. So they're like, immediately she takes it to Brooke and Brooke is like, "Oh my God, we can use this like against her, so that she won't become homecoming queen because she had actually gotten voted as a homecoming princess. Her and then she had also nominated Carter, even though Carter was pissed." To be homecoming princess, but all Chelsea wants to do is be the actual homecoming queen because before this girl stepped foot in Lake Monroe, she was the queen undisputedly. Nobody else was running. So she's pissed about that and she's like, I need to be queen for sure. So let's go to visit Rosie right now and we're going to threaten her. So they take the magazine to Rosie and they're like, listen, bitch, um, I don't know who you think you are. Well, actually, now we do know who you think you are. You're a queen, and we know that you're trying to run away from this man, and we will tell him where you are if you don't let Chelsea become homecoming queen tonight. And Rosie is like, I mean, all right, but like that seems a little excessive. And she's just like, fine, like, but don't take Carter's like princess crown away from her because she's not a threat to you. And then Chelsea's like, fine, I'll be benevolent this one moment. And she's like, but we're taking all your dresses. So they take all the dresses, they throw them in the dirt so that they can't wear them. And then Rosie reads the article because they gave her the article and she's reading it because she can, obviously read in Spanish. And she's like, she tells Carter, I need to go home like immediately. Like my mom is clearly in danger. Like, why would she marry this guy? Something's not right. And Carter's like, okay, well, let me just like figure out something. She calls Mr. Elegante and she's like, listen, dude, like we need to figure out something because she wants to come home and I know she can't. That's not safe. So they devise a plan for homecoming night. And he also sends them new dresses. So what happens is the night of homecoming, they arrive and they also get the bus driver who apparently doubles as a makeup artist to do their and like a bunch of other of the girls who I guess couldn't, weren't going to have the makeup professionally done. They're like, all of us can get our makeup done at the same time. So they get all of them, they get on the school bus and they all come out the school bus wearing masks. Like it's a masquerade theme. It's not a masquerade theme. And then they go into the homecoming dance and General Kane comes there because he was told that, they were going to go to this dance by Mr. Elegante, in accordance with what him and Carter discussed. So he shows up. Chelsea thinks he's just like security. So she's like, just get down there right now. Because she runs into him because she doesn't know who he is. And she's like, you just need to get down there and protect my crown. And he was like, okay, sure, girl. And then Carter and Rosie get properly mixed up the way they were. because Elegante told General Kane like Carter, or he said that Rosie's gonna be wearing Caribbean blue, and that's what Carter is wearing. So Carter gets kidnapped by General Kane, and she's about to, you know, get taken into the helicopter. But then Rosie figures out what's happening after she gets homecoming queen. She gets ends up getting named homecoming queen. And she was like, "No, I need to go help Carter. Like this is not her fight. Like this is my fight." So she's walking out. They finally meet up. Chelsea comes running out because she needs the crown that badly, and she takes the crown from her and falls into the water trying to get it. And then General Kane is like, this isn't your fight, Carter. Like, get out the way. Like, I'm just gonna take Rosie. But the Princess Protection Program is aware of what's happening, so they're already there, and they're like, dude, this is kidnapping, and like, you can't do that because you're on U.S. soil. And they basically foil him. And that's kind of, how that night ends. And then we see a fast forward to Rosie finally getting crowned as Queen of Costa Luna, and Ed cheering her on too loudly. And everybody is there, General Mason or Major Mason, as well as Carter, and all of her friends are all there to see her get crowned, and it's a happy ending. So with that, I think we'll be right back with the review.
So to get into the review of it all, I found this to be a very low stakes film.
Yeah,
that was that's my first takeaway. Like, even when you were talking about how like the mom is being like imprisoned, it's like we never see her cell. You know what I mean? Like, we don't even get a chance to like feel bad about her mom being captured by this man, because like she's always like in the throne room, like being asked for advice about things every time we see her. She doesn't look like particularly sallow or like withered. So yeah, it feels very. And then like the whole thing back in Louisiana is like homecoming queen, which is again super low stakes. Like, there's not even prize money. It's just like, all right, like, okay. But I'm not necessarily mad at that. It's an easy children's watch, I would guess.
Yeah, and it was I will say one part that was refreshing is that Carter very much knew what her dad did. Like, she knew that the bait shop was basically his front for actually being like in this secret service of some sort, the Princess Protection Program. Because as soon as he brings back Rosie, she's like, "We have a princess here." Like, like it's just very like upfront, yeah. But that's a stark contrast to a lot of Disney movies that we have watched, like Halloween Town, where like the mother purposefully doesn't want to tell her children their birthright, or just like what they do. And
it causes so many problems. It's like everything is rooted in like the base of this lie. When it's like you could have just told them.
Right.
Like, exactly. Tell them not to tell nobody. And like most kids kind of actually do get that. So yeah, it was pleasant to see like her and her dad have a good relationship.
Yeah, I did like that. And yeah, it was just nice to see like generally being like upfront. And I feel like that also might be because he's very much a single father in this one. Like, her mother is passed. And yeah, I think it also might be because of that, because he's a single father. But you know what? The woman in Halloween Town was a single mother, so.
Yeah, but I feel like we do tend to. I feel like single fathers often are portrayed that way.
Yeah.
And the idea is that means that they are inept because like they aren't. You know what I mean? It's like a thing of like women protect their kids and men like throw them off jungle gyms. So it's like like that's like the dichotomy that's usually put up. And I must say, my father did allow me to do some things on the shopping cart that my mother would have never approved of had she been in the supermarket at that moment. But like, but so like when it's like they always kind of like I'm thinking about it, and it's like I feel like when you see shows with like single fathers and like daughters, especially, they tend to be showcasing like friendship-based relationships, and that's supposed to be a sign of like the dad like kind of being out of his depths. But I don't know. That's just I don't necessarily think that they were leaning that heavily into this, but I feel like that's the common reading of that situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one other thing we did talk about in this one that we've both seen a lot in media and that you see also played out in this was the fact that they chose to make Carter's father a white man instead of making him Latino. Um, and it's like I feel like they do that often when they do biracial characters, where it's like the father, whoever the parent that didn't pass or that's still in the life of the kid is not the parent of color.
Nope.
Um, and it's just like a weird trope that I like want to end,
it
like
would be
because
it would be quite nice.
I just don't. I'm also like I don't get it on the part of the people who do it either because I'm like this could be another win for you because really what you could have had is that you would have had Rosie, who I guess we're assuming came from, well, two parents who were from Costa Lunia, right? So, assuming that it's a Latino country, they're speaking Spanish, whatever. They're Latinx. Everybody's Latinx in the family. But then you could have had like the father, the person protecting Rosie, and then Carter's father be Latinx as well, and that would have been, I don't know, even better, and it would
It
have
would
also
it,
made more
it,
sense.
it would just it would have worked. It just would have it all would have like came together rather nicely. And then you would have gotten points with the like community of color for making like all of your protagonists be of color, and then even like your antagonists, like you'd have a much higher quote unquote minority ratio than your average show. But I think like the reason that happens is actually to enforce the exact opposite. Like like there was a period of time where I worked like with like with talent agencies for a little bit, and one of my favorite things was to hear managers lament about how like in today's climate there are just no roles for their white actors. Like it's so hard for their like white male actors to get a job. And so I think like ironically enough, like part of the reason why it maybe continually happens the way it does is because then you can get away with you have like a real usually light bright very close to passing
Yep.
person of color playing your protagonist, so you get like points quote unquote for that, but then you don't lose points because you still keep like the white ratio up by making sure that like all the like, you know what I mean, like mom is still gonna be white or dad's still gonna be white, like still going to be like mostly white people around surrounding them, but you get points for the person of color, which is fucked. It's
It
fucked
is.
up.
It just doesn't.
It's fucked up.
I just personally hate seeing the trope, and I see it so often because every time now, if I see a biracial character, and I know like somebody has passed, like the mom or the dad, whoever. I'm always just like, oh Lord, it's gonna be the white parent thing again, isn't it? And then it always is. Like I watched Netflix did the Babysitters Club, and that came out like last year sometime. Um, and in the books, they basically turned one of the main characters in the books, Marianne, into from being white to being biracial, so she's half black, half white. And I'm like, I'm cool, like sure, that's fine to do, and especially for a kid show, cool. But instead of having her black mother parent be alive, it's a white father. And in the original books, it is her, like Marianne lives with her dad, and that's the whole thing. Her mom died relatively early, but I'm like, why didn't you just have her have a black dad? Like, what was the reasoning behind you having a white father? Everybody else on this show is white except for one of the other Babysitter Club members who's Asian. So, and she was Asian in the book, so she's always been Asian. So I'm like, there's really no reason why we needed to do this. But I see it just so often. It just irritated me. Like I specifically remember tweeting when I was watching that and be like, I hope they don't do the white parent thing. And then literally 10 seconds later, the father popped up and I'm like, you have to be kidding me. Like
It's also like really the reason I find it particularly messed up because like what it then allows you to do is to like erase if there is going to be a distinct culture that biracial child might have, or like not even necessarily have to grapple with, but just might experience, right?
mm-hmm.
Like you erase that. You know what I mean? Like you make it so that they actually don't have to deal with that at all. And like the audience doesn't have to deal with that. The audience doesn't have to see like different food on the table or like maybe a different dynamic because different cultures do have very different dynamics between like parents and parent and child than is often portrayed for white cultures. But it's like you just don't have to deal with that. You don't have to show that kid. The only thing that then makes that kid like different is like their race, and they're completely separated in that. They don't have anyone that they can sort of lean on about that. And it creates this idea that that doesn't that wouldn't be a factor in like that parental relationship, you know, when it definitely is. Like what even like whether it's because of the erasure of the other ethnicity or other race, or because of like a child's active attempt to like embrace that other side of them, like it is a factor in the relationship between those parents and those children if your child is like half of a different race than you are or a different culture than you are, you know what I mean? So that's, I mean, like that's why I find it particularly frustrating. It doesn't like play a huge role in like the film per se, but yeah, it's like we both clocked it as we
Yeah.
watched it. We were like, again, like it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way.
Yes, I think another thing that we also clock that we've seen in other Disney movies, um, is the fact that they're always trying to crown these kids when they're like 15, 16. We saw it in The Descendants as well with Ben. Oh God, I just hate that name so much.
Everything like oh God, I hate when we have to reference that film. It just upsets me.
But it's the same thing with him, though it wasn't nearly as dark because both of his parents were actively alive, which actually made it more confusing.
Exactly, it just made it dumb.
Alive and young.
It just made it dumb. Like, at least with this one, there's a reason. It's dark, but there's a reason. That is just it now made no damn sense.
Right.
Why are you letting a 15-year-old run a country if you are perfectly capable of doing it yourself?
Y'all are maybe 45. Like,
it's like,
what are you doing?
This is why everything in Oregon is going to shit, because all of the adults have stepped aside and let the 15-year-old run the land.
Yes. But I think we see it in this one too, where they're trying, like her father passes and she gets crowned at 16. And
and immediately a coup is staged.
Yes, it's just like I don't know why are we doing this? Because it's also like
super dark.
That's also not what would ever happen. Just not in today's times. Like you'd still be a minor, so they would have like your mother rule until you're
there'd be a regent. There'd be someone like operating until you're like at least 18, usually a little bit older, usually like 20 something,
right?
Because everyone recognizes that like this just don't make no damn sense. But yeah, I don't know. And they do the same thing
Victoria.
They do the same thing in Princess Diaries too, where it's just like I just don't like it's just, like you must rule. It's like I don't.
It's like wouldn't her grandmother technically rule until she could?
I think that's what they actually do because it's like a book and it's a bit more sensible than a decom. Like that's what actually happens, but it's just a thing that happens a lot where parents die and the children are gifted countries, not gifted, but inherit countries, and and then hijinks ensue naturally because that's what happens with children.
Yeah, because as much as I wanted to be like General Kane is probably misogynist, but I'm also like even if you had the reverse situation, which actually might have been interesting, but anyways, if you had like a woman who was doing like I'm just gonna do a coup on this random country because there's a 16-year-old that's about to be crowned. Like it's like 16-year-old king, a boy king. Like even if you had the reverse, it would still be like what he was doing would still make 100% sense because it's like I'm not gonna respect a 16-year-old. Like
it's like it's like if there is a time to like steal a country, it's probably when they are putting a minor in charge. Like that's just probably the best time to do it, and arguably like you'll get the public on your side fairly easily when they're like, do you really want these like this one who's like worrying about, you know, proms and I mean everywhere in the world doesn't have proms, but like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Teenage things. Do you want them like controlling the country's debt? Being able to deploy the troops to war? Is that what you want? Probably not. So I ironically enough I understand Magnus Kane's plight.
Yes, yes. No,
In this
he knew
film.
what he was doing and he did plan strategically.
But foiled by that darn princess protection program. Who saw that one coming?
Because yes, again, we're fighting for somebody to be queen of a country. Like that is our we discussed this on The Descendants 2, I think. But you know, just again, it's like the idea of monarchy, especially now, and especially we were discussing how she describes how Costa Luna is not even on most maps.
It's like
So I'm like, so you have literally erased a Latin country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is like I think I it was one of the first things that I said about it. I was like, because here's the thing, we live in such a turbulent time when it comes to Americans understanding that you need to respect people and respect other cultures, and that there is value to be had in the world by things that are not hamburgers and starch jeans. Like like you know, Americans are struggling with that, right? Some are handling it a little bit better than others. We'll see what the next 4 years brings, if that shifts the needle in a more tolerant or accepting way or not. But in this, you know, general atmosphere, I was like, the concept of like a South American princess is actually like something that I would like. I like that it's being presented. Because what you do usually hear about South America in this country is all, you know, strife and dictatorships, and people don't know how to run governments, and just all this like fuck shit, right? To paint it as like a lesser place or filled with people who are incapable of like running places up to the standards of the great United States of America. So it's like the idea of, I was like, I really like the idea of presenting it as like a place with like culture that might like supersede, you know, like, or just like might have like a regal nature to it, something that's like respectable and like all this shit, right? But then they did have it be a coup, so there was that. And then they like really when they said the thing about the island being invisible, I was like, you literally could have done the exact opposite of that. You literally could have been like, she is from this little like this small island like off the coast of South America, one of the coasts of South America, that like seems super small, but is actually quite important to the running of the world. You know what I mean? Like maybe they have like a particular resource, or like there's just something about this, because like let's just be clear about this. That shit exists. Like there are island countries that are very very integral to the globalization situation that we have, right? And that like big superpowers actively rely on. And we could have made it be like, we could have built this whole story around like the fact that this country is actually quite important. And then we could have taught like children something about like other places being important as well. But that's not what y'all did. Y'all literally just erased it. Y'all erased it and y'all made it a coup and made it a turbulent place where there they have to worry about real thrones being usurped, versus in the bayou with the alligators, the biggest problem that they have is who's going to be homecoming queen. So, you know,
right.
I felt some type of way. I was like, this is just a missed opportunity.
For real. Because I'm like, they could have also coded it. I think you would have needed to make it black if you did this, but they could have also coded it like someplace like Trinidad where everything is oil. Like Trinidad has so much fucking oil. Nobody ever talks about it.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't really depend on tourism, because they literally have a bunch of oil.
And we're fine.
And a lot of people depend on it. But again, nobody ever talks about it. But they could have coded it as like, you know, some version of that, or like they have like, you know, a lot of diamonds or something, you know, like
yeah,
saying,
yeah, there's
like
just
a
like
way
a resource
to make it,
that was
like resource
important.
Heavy. Exactly. I would also like to, as I always do, just point out the colorism in this, because Everybody
Uh,
was
all
multiple
the
shades
villains are
lighter
the
than the pick
darkest
bag in
ones.
this.
Yeah, all the because like even like the darkest one in Louisiana is actually Chelsea,
Right, who is
who's
played by the
Asian.
lovely Jamie Chung.
Yeah,
Um,
who's Asian, and like obviously Magnus Kane is the darkest one in Costa Luna. That is actually very true.
and he's not that dark. We say that it's
Yeah,
like
yeah. No one is dark, but
nobody
they're
is an
the
Afro Latino in this
darkest
film.
of the of the hues that we see. That is funny. Oh
But
Lord.
I just like to point that out because it exists in more community than just the Black community. And it is very present in the Latinx communities. So just wanted to put that out there. Um, and yeah, I mean, I feel like this one overall, we were just very much like, it's cute, it's serviceable. It didn't blow us out the water or anything. But in terms of like a girl focused caper of sorts, I guess you would put it into.
Yeah, I
Um,
guess it's about friendship.
sure, yeah,
Like
friendship.
it's about friendship and like not judging people and like and it is very much about like beauty on the inside and the outside. You must have both to truly be a princess. You cannot simply be one or the other. I do again feel that this lesson was learned and just done better in The Princess Diaries.
Yes.
Just throw that out there. Although that one had no. I was gonna say had no black people, but that one of the girls that's Mandy Moore's, she was black.
Yeah, she was one of her followers.
Yeah,
One
so
of like what I
there's one.
generally like to refer to as the girls from Recess, the Ashleys. That's what I like to call all
Yes,
these little
yes, yes,
popular
yes.
posses.
Yeah.
Everybody's
That's
just one of the Ashleys.
accurately described. And the Ashleys had one black Ashley as well,
They did.
so it is perfectly fitting.
They did.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I do think I, I agree. I agree with that. And yeah, gosh, this one was it was like it's cute. It's cute and it is nice to see like a little, Latinx film. Most people that worked on it were Latinx because it was filmed in Puerto Rico. So like even down to the crew, like when you read the credits, it's like most of the people were Latinx, which was nice to see. And not very common, even in non-Disney movies. So, so I think like that's at least something to kind of shout them out for, even though I think they probably had to do it to film there.
Yeah, that's how you get the tax break.
Right, that's how you get that tax rebate. But still, I'm like, you did it, and it's cute. Like, hey, give us
Yeah,
Puerto
it's
Rican
really
locals.
it is a like I said, low stakes film. Like there's just
Very.
not like it's of so low stakes that there is actively nothing to even dislike about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're just like, all right, like it exists, and I'm sure that like for like kids when it came out, like the kids were like, oh my goodness, Selena and Demetria together. Like they were freaking out, and that was fun for them to have. And they dress up and there's alligators and chum. And, like you know what I mean? Like there are things.
Okay,
that, like,
Plankton.
she stayed like waiting in that swamp.
She did.
For various forms of swamp critters. So like yeah, like there's things to and she learns to reject the boy that like doesn't see her for it. She doesn't, and neither of them need a boy by the end of it. You know what I mean? Like they don't need a prince, so like kudos to that. There's not like but there's also not much that sets it as something of caliber.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it just lives in this like, all right, like it exists and that's fine. So I guess with that,
yeah.
Or go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think one other note I will make is that I think that they could have had more Louisiana culture to it because especially of all the U.S. states, it is one of the states that has a very distinct culture that's assigned to it, and that's like no shade to the girls from I don't know Illinois, but like or like Nebraska or but I feel like
in Montana there are more cows than people.
There you go. Or even like a West Virginia or whatever. Like, but New Orleans has Louisiana has a very specific culture because of the way that it was created through the Louisiana Purchase, all of that. Like, they just had a very specific culture that I feel like would have been. It was a way that Disney could have tapped into that, even though, again, I think he would have had to make it black, to make that, or to even just incorporate it, because even then I was like, how are we at a school and there's no Creoles? Where are the Creoles at? Like, I don't see them. There was an area black in this.
Nary a black
Nary a
to be
black.
found. But like, I mean, I guess here's my thinking that like, although they could have just in Florida, I don't know why they didn't.
That was my
like,
and that's what me and Nina were talking before they revealed that they were in. I immediately was like, "Is this Louisiana?" Because I saw like eaves and swamps, and I was like, "This is giving me Louisiana." But she was like, "Oh, maybe they're in the Florida Keys," and I was like, "Oh, you know what? That would make more sense because also there's a very large amount of Latinx people in like Southern Florida." So I was like, "Oh, yeah, that would track. It makes sense."
Yeah,
and it also is swampland.
Because I think like they probably did it, one, because of the terrain of Puerto Rico, and then two, because the idea was to make it remote. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in the psyche of American children, like Louisiana Bayou is more like inaccessible and strange and like somewhere where no one would recognize the Spanish princess than, or it's Spanish, not Spaniard, like a Latinx princess, whatever, princess, like just South American princess than Florida. But even that, I don't think children think that hard about things, so I don't. I don't.
No, I think if they had, like,
it's a missed opportunity film.
Yeah,
it's a film of missed opportunity.
I just think you could have had a very. I think you just could have had a very interesting take on things if you had like. But again, I think you would have either had to make this black, or Carter, the Mason family would have had to be black, or like half black or whatever.
Or even if they're not, like, I don't even know if it has to be black per se. Just like it would just have to engage with the culture outside of it being a bait shop. You know what I mean? Like they would just have to be like, they really don't have Carter have any interest in this
other than the bait shop.
Which is not an interest, it's a job. Like it's not, you know what I mean? Like it's not like they don't, like Ed has an interest, you know what I mean? Like he's filming her the whole goddamn time, but it's like it's weird. It's actually kind of weird that the protagonist doesn't have anything that they're interested in. And it's like she could have been interested in like jazz or like music. You know what I mean? Like you could have given the girl something to do that related to the fact that it was Louisiana, or just like put something of Louisiana besides the swamp land.
Yeah, they just
in the film to make it worth it that it was Louisiana, or you could have just not said where they were.
Yeah,
you also could have just not done that, and it would have been fun.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's like when you say Louisiana, because it, as you were saying, because it is such a specific culture, or a massing of culture, it's like it becomes very absent that you don't see any of that.
Right.
Like you are very apparent that like that is absent.
Right. I just had questions. None of the girls were out here speaking French. Like I just, they had the French.
And like and even like the homecoming situation could have been like it's weird,
like Mardi Gras themed.
Like now that I think about it, because like some of the masks like did have Mardi Gras colors, right? And it's like you actually did kind of put these things in, but you didn't do it coherently and address it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you could have actually been like that, like the homecoming court is a big deal at this school because it's in the bayou. Like you could have actually made that a whole thing, but it just wasn't built that way. And now I have to wonder, was Puerto Rico really cheaper, or did you spend all the money flying everybody out to Puerto Rico and this so didn't have the budget to actually like build that stuff into the story in like a fun and interesting way? Missed opportunities all around.
Yeah.
Okay, now I take it back. Now I'm a little bit more upset with this film.
No,
that's where we've gotten to by the end.
No, it is literally just one of those things that's so blatant where I'm like, you can't, like, it's just because Louisiana is such a specific thing. Like I was saying before, I think everybody knows that. Like it's legitimately like one of these states that has its own, like, it just has a culture. So it's like, you to just completely ignore that and not include anybody that like, again, there are Latinx people who live in Louisiana, of course. But, like I'm like, you don't see any, like you just don't have the diversity that exists there. You don't have any of the local, like the Creole. You don't have like the food. You don't like it's like you don't have anything other than the fact that this took place in Louisiana, because Louisiana is like not a place that people would expect her to be. And you just could have elevated that and been like, well, let me show you what Mardi Gras is. And like, like
Yeah.
let's go and like watch them do the second line, or like just something interesting, or like there's a band playing down the street and that's just very normal.
Yeah.
Like
Or like even when she's working at the shop, like why was it like you could have done like frozen yogurt, my friend? Like you could have done like a beignet situation.
yeah.
And things go awry.
Or her
And I
selling
know that you were
crawfish. That would
yeah,
have been
and I know
perfectly
that would have been
acceptable.
great. And I know that you were thinking about it because Princess and the Frog came out around the same time. So I
Right.
know that you've done this research, Disney. What happened? What happened? Huh. Okay. All right. I mean, I'm glad that we got here because, like, maybe I have to reevaluate, how I feel about this movie.
There's also white Louisianian. This is my other issue. They're Cajuns. Get one of the Cajuns. That's very much a culture. Like they are literally their own thing. They literally
Oh Lord.
speak the same. Like they speak a version of French too, and like they're their own type of white. They're their own culture though, and I'm just like, if you were really gonna do like all these random ass white people, like you could have at least gotten me some Cajun
somebody could have been
whites from
something.
like down in the bayou. They have like one of the highest Vietnamese populations in the U.S. in Louisiana.
Which is probably
Jamie
why
Chung is not
Chelsea
Vietnamese.
was.
Like
I know that she's not Vietnamese, but Brenda Song wasn't Mongolian,
yes,
correct? Or like China, like what I mean? Like it's a whole thing. So it's like, I already know that that's just probably going to be inaccurate. But maybe that's why Chelsea was Asian.
Yeah,
maybe that's why she was cast Asian. I'm
I
trying to.
enjoy Jamie Chung in this, and I don't necessarily.
Oh no, and she's good in other things. Like I enjoy Jamie Chung in general.
Yeah,
but
she's great. But yeah, no, I'm just like, there's just so many more opportunities you could have had, like, to make this what could have been a very interesting Louisiana story specifically, and then offsetting that with like Costa Luna as a country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a missed opportunity, as you were
So,
saying.
I mean, are you like you gonna watch this with the babies, or like what's the
If they want to, I mean, like, I would just be like, if you really like Selena and Demetria, like, sure, we can put it on. It's like, it's fine. Like we said, serviceable, fine. Yeah. It's cool, not earth shattering. I don't have anything remotely against it other than that part and like just like the general colorism aspect. But I would also hope by this point that like by the time like I have kids that watch it, that they kind of know like Louisiana has its own culture and they can point it out. Just be like, why is there
Mommy,
no gumbo?
I don't understand.
Why are they eating gumbo? Where's the jambalaya?
What's going on?
This is, why are they selling crawfish?
This is weird. We've been to Louisiana. It's not like this.
I feel oppressed at 10. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's one of those things, like, they can put it on. I have no stakes in this. I am not involved in my children's watching of this film. If it happens, it will probably be without my knowledge, and I don't have any issue with that. But I highly doubt that it is something that I will
actively
engage with them. Yeah, like like that. I don't think this would ever come up. I don't think it would ever come up, like, between us, unless they watched it on their own and were like, "Hey, Mom, we were watching this movie and they do one thing in Louisiana. Like we were down there last week, and it was very strange that I didn't see not one king cake anywhere, but they were all wearing Mardi Gras masks." And I'll be like, "Yeah, you're right. That it was weird." And that will probably be the end of the conversation. But it is like but I can also imagine a world where like, well, never mind. I was gonna say like I can imagine a world where this is like beloved, by like some people and therefore very nostalgic for them. But it's like I don't know if that's true.
It might
Like
be.
if I can actually imagine that. Like I'm sure that it is beloved by some people, but like I don't think that I can get into the heads of those people.
I'm
You know what I
sure if
mean?
you were a young, like, white Latina girl, this movie may have
Maybe.
meant a lot to you.
I suppose.
But
I guess. I
if you were
guess.
in that age group when this came out, I could see
Yeah.
that.
I guess that like even like just because it is two Latinx women at the helm, and then like you have a country like it is a South American country.
Yeah, like
Um,
I could see that.
that's fair.
But
That's fair.
you guys let us know if maybe this was really popular amongst Gen Z. Did your sister like it? Do you know?
No, I didn't even ask her. I can,
You don't
and
have to.
like we
It's
can leave
fine.
it in the comments, but I have not. She has. I have never heard my sister mention. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay.
I feel like 'cause I don't think. I also think my sister's like not that into like the Selena Gomez and like Demi Lovato. Let me just call her what people know her as by for a second. But Selena and Demetria were not like they weren't. I don't think they were icons of my sisters.
Got
You
it.
know what I mean?
Okay.
Like I can see in my head. I'm like, oh, like I know when my sister found like certain people, and I don't recall them. Actually, maybe Selena. Feel like there may have been a Selena Gomez poster on her wall for like a second when she
Okay.
was like 11.
Okay.
Maybe I could be making that up though. But either way, still never mentioned this. I really don't know. I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know. But yeah,
Okay.
I don't think it's not something that I need in my life. But no shade to anybody who deeply enjoys and loves.
Yeah. No, let
That's
us
how
know
I
what you
feel.
guys like about it. I'd actually be very interested, not in a rude way, just like I would just be a very well, no, because it's like if somebody that was, 15 when the Cheetah Girls came out, like, asked us like what did we like about it, I could tell you, like I would be like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, I can let you know what I liked loved about it, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if this was like, your generation's like this was your personal like favorite, I'd love to know why.
Yeah, that's real. That's very real. Please enlighten us.
Yeah, no, I hope.
Always open to learn new things.
Yeah, yeah, because we could have missed something. This was our first time ever
Yeah.
watching it.
Which is something that, the characters in this had to adapt. Like, they had to be open to learning new things about each other and themselves. So that's a plus.
Yeah. Um, so I guess with that, guys, we will see you next
We'll
week.
see.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Critics Kingdom. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and SoundCloud so you can stay up to date, as well as interacting and letting us know what you guys think on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Critics Kingdom and on Instagram at The Critics Kingdom. We're excited to talk to you again next week.